Welcome to this Tuesday evening program with Dhamma. We'll start with about 40 minutes of meditation and then have some conversation. The theme is patience. Getting ready to settle down for meditation. One may look inside and see how we are today. If the mind is caught up in a lot of busy activities, responsibilities, or different trains of thought, in which case it will be beneficial to take a definite objective meditation and make the effort to focus our awareness to that objective meditation or that meditation procedure. Then, if the mind wanders, we can be gentle and patient with that. But this choosing a definite meditation procedure is a kind act of discipline, helping the mind to settle down. If the mind is already very calm, centered, full of mindfulness, because of the practice or the way we've been able to go for this day, then we may more quickly be able to let go of that sticking to a definite meditation procedure and instead go for what is sometimes called mind in the middle, or sometimes called open field of awareness, where one is simply sitting in stillness with all of the sense gates available, being aware of the state of mind or whatever arises. If the mind already has too much agitation, it's impossible to just go right into that open awareness because the train of thought will take over and prevent us from being able to settle. So I will give breath meditation as the procedure for tonight. After doing the breath meditation for a while, if you see that the mindfulness is very clear and the mind is calm and steady, then it may be all right to let go of being so specific with the breath and simply go to stillness. But anytime there's some distraction that takes us away from the meditation, then it's good to come back very clearly and settle the breath into the procedure of the breath meditation. With that introduction, please come to an upright and balanced posture. aware of the physical body, connected to the seat or cushion, connected to the ground. Within the space of the room where you are, acknowledging that living body, the physical body. And taking a few minutes to be aware of the touching sensations, especially touch. If there's any aches or pains in the body, acknowledge that and relax with that, adjusting the body at the beginning to be as comfortable as possible. Aware of the touching of the hands, the clothing touching the body, the air touching the skin, and any of the five sensations that's noticeable right now. And if the breath is noticeable, aware of the rise and fall of the breath. letting the breath come to the front. With awareness on the breath. Even if other sensations are noticeable. Letting the breath stay in front. Like listening to your friend in a crowded place with many noises. The one you're there for is your friend. So pay attention to the breath. Noticing which part of the breath, in which part of the body, the breath is easy to notice. Where is the breath clear? And letting awareness stay within that part of the body. Notice what it's like. If awareness wobbles or goes to other things, notice what's that like. If awareness comes back to breath, notice that. If awareness stays on the breath, notice that. Where's the mind? Aware of the breath. Antipamam tapotitika nimbanang paramang vadanti bunda nahipam bhajito parupakati nasamano hoti parang vihetayanto. Patience is the highest practice. Tapo is referring to a fire. You could say the renunciate practice that the other sects may have had, subjecting to the body to fire, like walking across hot coals and making the body be immune from burning or able to tolerate that burning sensation. Mm. In the Buddha's case, the fire, the burning, the painful experience that we should subject ourselves to is not physical torture. But the Buddha does recommend that on those occasions that we're subjected to criticism, harsh words, cruelty or anger coming at us from others, that we should consider that kind of a practice opportunity to make the mind capable to withstand that harshness, that criticism, that hatred, that anger, even physical violence, or even active cruelty, being able to withstand it. This seems to be, if you look at Kanti, that's the Pali word for patience. One could say that we would be very patient with ourselves and realize that this path of practice can take a long time. A person might have to make the effort for many, many weeks before they would obtain stream entry. or maybe even it would be years before they would have the opening of the Dhamma eye and have the great realization, the great transformation. Even it said Venerable Anuruddha was one of the greatest of monks, that his enlightenment took 17 years to accomplish. Mm. And so there's that kind of patience that we use within the context of practice, following this training, following these suggestions, putting our mind to the best of our ability in line with the teaching, understanding the Dhamma or the concepts, and then using mindfulness and meditation to see how these ideas or these truths that are pointed out by the Buddha can be manifested in the actuality of our lived experience, and can then be perhaps realized by us in a full and direct way. But this can take time. The amount of resistance that a person could have within could be deep. Our habitual habits of mind, our habitual ways of thinking, our habitual ways of reacting could be very much settled in. And even when making the effort, they may not immediately transform. And so there's that kind of patience. And we use the same kind of patience with each other. If we're living in a community, if we're with a sangha, or if we have friends and colleagues, even if we are like that kind of good friend, that we may speak to our companion about the Dhamma. We may speak to them about their personal practice, so they may share with us confide in us what's going on with them with their practice. And it could be that when you look at your friend, you could see like very clearly, oh, that friend has got a real mental block about such and so, and we wish they could come through that, but you can't necessarily force it. You can be a patient and a good-hearted friend to your friend, and to try to speak and show the Dhamma that gets through that roadblock, knowing that each person is on their own path and they have to find their own way to go across to dissolve whatever the roadblocks or the difficulties are that they might experience. This kind of patience is it's a real thing. It's very true. When the Buddha speaks about Kanti, even the Kanti is one of the perfections. So even the perfection of Kanti, the perfection of patient forbearance, the stories or the examples that are given in the suttas most often are given in the case where one has encountering something that's disagreeable externally, another person's criticism, another person's false accusation, even the rudeness and violence. There's the famous story of Puna. He was the Buddha gave him a teaching, a Dhamma teaching, that's particularly relating to not grasping with clinging and relishing to pleasant sensations. And then in response to that, Puna says, sir, there's a country named Sunaparanta. I shall live there. So he's going out as the Buddha recommended for the monks to go out as Dhammadutas, as messengers of the Dhamma, to go across the face of India and bring the good news about the Dhamma to many people. And the Buddha said that the people of Sunaparanta are wild and rough. If they abuse and insult you, what will you think of them? And his answer is, these people of Sunaparanta are gracious, truly gracious, since they don't hit me with their fist. That's what I'll think. And the Buddha says, well, what if they do hit you with their fists? What will you think then? And he says, well, I'll think they're truly gracious since they don't throw stones at me. But what if they throw stones at you? Well, I'll think they're truly gracious since they don't beat me with a club. But what if they do beat you with a club? What will you think of them? He'll think, well, at least they don't stab me with a knife. But what if they do stab you with a knife? What will you think of them? He'll think, well, they're truly gracious since at least they don't take my life with that sharp knife. And the Buddha said, but what if they do take your life with the sharp knife? And then the answer is, there are disciples of the Buddha who looked for someone to assist them with slitting their wrists because they were horrified, repelled, and disgusted with the body and with life. I have found this without looking. That's what I'll think. I will think at least I went to my death without having any anger or any resentment. So there are all of the ways that we have learned to overcome aversion, to overcome hatred, are the tools that we can bring into play in order to let the mind be expanded and boundless mind of compassion, even when we encounter that aversiveness, that negativity in other people. What the Venerable Puna is speaking about here in the first several examples going down that list is the idea of expanding the focus of attention to not focus on the aspect of the other person's behavior, which is cruel and hateful, but instead notice the remaining part of that person which is not cruel and hateful, to focus the part that's gracious because they haven't they're not like 100% filled with hatred. They're partly filled with hatred, partly not filled with hatred. So that changing of focus, that's one of the tricks, one of the ways. And another way is to understand this dukkha that another person may experience as dukkha, and to then loving kindness. When loving kindness is able to see dukkha, then the wish or the intention, the thought that arises is, may that dukkha come to its end. May the conditions change so that that person is able to emerge from dukkha. And if we see in ourselves the instinctive reactivity of aversion starts aversion, that aversion can start in us, then we could see that with our hiriotapa comes up, because we see that hatred is that if hatred is able to arise in us when we're encountering that danger, then we will be in danger of losing what we've gained on the spiritual path. And so then the strong, skillful compassion for our own self, as well as for the other person, is to keep our own self safe and protected by flooding the zone with compassion or loving kindness, so that the hatred doesn't arise in us and doesn't take over and doesn't come to dominate the situation. Even in this way, the dukkha of hatred and violence might be experienced as not even something personal, not something that's personalized as a self, as that this other person, this perpetrator of violence, is a self who's got that absolute, unchanging, impermeable quality of hatred that becomes like a stone, something which has a fixed character and is never able to change. And then that unchangeable, fixed, solid, stone-like hatred then is able to hit this self, which is conceived as another self, which is vulnerable and breakable and able to be harmed. And so then a self encounters a self, and there's this. Then that's when the sense of the danger comes up, when the sense of fear comes up, when the reactivity comes up. But if it's seen in the light of anatta, of non-self, of something that is arising because of causes and conditions, which is continuously changing, then it's only a manifestation of something that's there just at the moment, which is actually quite ephemeral, not solid at all, and which in particular is able to be touched by the alternative force of kindness or compassion. The usual translation of that Kanti Tapo Paramam is patience is the highest austerity. Um, I believe that those of us who are practitioners, who've been practitioners for a long time, can still sometimes be shocked and baffled by how easy it is for irritation to arise when we encounter aggression or cruelty or criticism, so that the non-arising of that kind of reactivity is really a wonderful test of whether we've really got it or not. To the extent that our practice really has gained a level of maturity, a level of being very well integrated, if we have truly realized the transformation, the inner transformation, which is the promise of these teachings, then we may say that uh, uh, we are not able to be shaken up and disturbed by outside things which are displaying anger or aversion or even cruelty. I think it was quite interesting that uh, uh, the opening of that Unavada Sutta, um, where the Buddha started giving the lesson about relishing and delight with pleasant sensations. So Puna was uh, known to be, he'd had a very luxurious and sheltered life when he was younger, and so he was quite kind of like delicate. Uh, I believe that if the reactivity or the overreactivity, the oversensitivity to um, criticism and cruelty could be combined with also having an oversensitivity to pleasure and fun. So if we are not cautious about the danger of being distracted by experiences that are fun and enjoyable and pleasant, and losing our path or losing our intention when we have a chance to relax and have fun, uh, then that letting the guard down, letting down our samvara, that restraint of the senses, when we let the samvara go down, because we want to enjoy those things which are fun and pleasant with it, then we may be making ourselves vulnerable to then being reactive to things which are aversive or negative like that. So there is the suggestion that those who are serious in their practice would really be dedicated to having a kind of favoring equanimity and being careful about excessive either delight or aversion towards especially things of the five senses which are uh, uh, enjoyable or those which are painful. I think I may pause here and see if there are comments or questions, things that you've would like to know about what I've said, or things that you've learned about the significance of the intentional practice of patience, or your success story, or the challenges and difficulties you experience when you try to practice patience, especially practicing patience when you encounter when you encounter anger, criticism, cruelty, or even violence. What have you learned about the power of patience? Okay, Flo.
Thank you, Aya. Uh, this happened to me a few years ago. One of my partners, who I'm still with, we would have these like very long arguments together where she would be like, "No, Flo, the thing about religion is it's all bad and terrible," and I'd sit there and be like, "Yeah, I hear you. I don't think that's true, but I understand the points you're making," and this would just go on for like hours, like frequently. Um, And I feel like by being very patient with those arguments and other arguments I've had with people in my life, I come to a better place of stability in terms of how I am responding to other people's criticism. Like to endure it with patience in a way that I'm like, yeah, I handled that well, makes me feel more confident in myself. It's emotionally stressful at least still for me. But I feel like when I do it, I get like a meaningful gain in terms of I want to use the word stability or solidity. And that's it.
Mhm. Thank you. Uh, I apologize that my computer is acting um, peculiar today. Uh, Richard has a hand up, and then after Richard, Anagarika Mitakanti.
Thank you, Aya. I just wanted to mention an insight that I had about patience. And it came from looking at the paramis. Now, in Theravadan Buddhism, there's 10 paramis, but they're not actually listed anywhere. It's more of a doctrinal analysis. They're not, like you could say, the Four Noble Truths or the Six Senses, those all have specific lists, and Buddha, goes through those lists and stuff. But the paramis are not like that. And in Mahayana, there's only 6 paramis. And this made me curious, like, oh, why is there only 6 in Mahayana, but there's 10 in Theravadan? Because normally as things go on and expand, you would expect Theravadan to have either the same amount or less, and Mahayana to probably have added more things. And so I was just contemplating these paramis, and all of a sudden I noticed a pattern. And it follows the pattern of the various disciplic groups and noble disciples of the Buddha. So in the 6 Mahayana paramis, the first is dana. So when one becomes what I like to term as a loving friend level of the Dharma, usually they want to give charity, the householders, etc., right? They want to give charity. So there's dana, right? When one becomes a little more serious, one takes upon themselves the precepts, 5 or more, right? So that's the next level. The I
Sila.
prefer to call it the confidence follower. So, so that's sila, the next parami, right? As one becomes more serious, as Buddha describes in many places, you go and you sit with the knowledgeable bhikkhus, and they teach you the Dharma, and you begin to memorize the Dharma, right? So as one becomes more serious, then one wants to attend classes, and that means you have to have more patience, right? Many Buddhist followers, when you go to like Buddhist countries, don't necessarily attend classes, but they will go to the temple, they'll give charity, etc. So you begin to develop patience, right? Then when you have the breakthrough, the stream entry, one of the things you feel is like tremendous amount of energy. Okay, like, okay, now I know what it is. Now I know what I have to do, more or less, right? No one gets it, everything perfect about it, but you have a certain now positive, correct, direction. So that's virya. So that's the 4th parami. Then as you go through the 8-fold path, in Mahayana they call it jhana, but that's jhana, right? The meditations. So when you perfect the meditations, the eighth step of the path, that's the 5th parami. And then eventually panna, they call it prajna, but panna awakens, right? And that's panna vimukti, right? You become an arahant, and you attain liberation from samsara. Anyways, that's just my opinion. No one has to accept it or anything, but it's just interesting that I saw this, in my opinion, this clear pattern along the way, of development using the 6 paramis. Anyways, thank you very much for listening.
Considering that Kanti is associated with listening to the Dhamma, that happens, we see that in the Mangala Sutta, that the development of Kanti and listening to the monks goes together. That always used to make me laugh, sort of, because sometimes a bhikkhu who's a great teacher can give a Dhamma talk that will last for several hours, or they might, start at 7 o'clock at night and be speaking about explaining the Dhamma and answering questions going up until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. And one is, trying to keep your eyes open, trying to listen. And a person could even be finding it difficult and challenging to keep like open-minded and really attentive and listening and able to receive the teaching that's being given. Or else it could happen that if our teacher is giving a teaching, they're trying to tell you the thing that's difficult for you to hear because they've seen what your blind spot is, or the thing that you need. And so then even though the teaching is really for your good and for your benefit, you may have some certain resistance to it. But having patience in that case means not responding with resistance, but keeping that real space of being still, open, and receptive to allow the teachings to come in that one is able to hear. Or even if you're reading the suttas, sometimes you could have the same reaction. If there's something in the suttas that's something that you're not happy about, not willing to hear about, you could feel like frustrated, like you want to just skip over that page because you didn't like that Dhamma teaching. And that's that's a failure of patience. But if you if you stay patient with the Dhamma teaching, and if there's something that you actually can't understand how this teaching is supposed to work, well, you might just say, okay, I don't yet understand it, but let me receive this, and perhaps with time, as I practice, it will open up for me and I will be able to understand it. So that's a good reminder. I really appreciate the sequence that you gave in putting patients in that particular place.
One more thing, you reminded me when you said it. I forgot to equate patience to Dharma follower. So you've got the metta follower, dana, charity. You've got the confidence follower. You take on the precepts now because you're more accepting, and you want to be less. You want to be like a friend to everybody. I mean, really taking on the precepts, you're not interfering, you're not hurting others. You get patience and study the Dharma. That's a Dharma follower, right? Virya awakens with the attainment of stream entry. Dana is the combination of once returner and no returner, and then culminating in wisdom, or I prefer to just say understanding. That's the Arahant, the complete understanding, and liberation through complete understanding. So you can see the sequence of those followers, but I forgot to mention Dharma follower, when I was describing it. Anyway, thank you.
I'm going to invite Anagarika Mitakanti to speak.
Hello. Reflecting on Kanti, when I flew to Norway, this was the first time flying on 8 precepts. So no entertainment for 11 hours. And also, since it was after solar noon, I also couldn't eat. So I find myself having to actually practice patience or just suffering. And that was interesting. And it was very clear that just wanting not to be there or wanting the flight to be over is like free suffering, and then just sort of accepting it, trying to enjoy it, makes it go much faster. So that's my little reflection there.
Yes, indeed, dukkha, getting what we don't want, not getting what we want. Being around, connected to that which is not loved or not, and to be separated from something that is likable, to be with something which is dislikable. That's a much broader definition where we can see that when we understand the cause of dukkha and are able to let go of that craving, to let go of that attachment, that clinging, then we can experience the release from dukkha. But if we have not yet fully discovered or opened up how to let go of that craving and clinging, then we're stuck with dukkha. As long as we're in that realm of the main work we have to do is the First Noble Truth, because we've not yet discovered how to make the Second Noble Truth happen for us, then we have to be patient. And that patience is, kind of bearing up to the situation, understanding this is dukkha, and also investigating, looking, studying, trying to understand, why is this dukkha still going on for me? And then eventually the breakthrough can happen, and we can notice the moments when dukkha ceases, when small bits of dukkha that used to happen cease, and then when great chunks of dukkha that used to exist for us have ceased to exist for us, and our life becomes ever lighter and brighter and more clear. And then, in that case, yeah, we can go on. Ren?
Thank you, Ayya. My ear heard patience, but my heart, the flavor in my heart feels like endurance, and I feel like it's the same thing, but a different perspective, the same process, but maybe a different perspective. And I think it's probably worth looking into it, worth myself looking into, because endurance means I have to try to withstand that waves of anxiety and fear, and a constant need to quench that little itty bitty fear. It's like by distracting myself, listening to a lot of Dhamma talk or watching, movies, and just anything but meditation, anything but having maybe the patience to have curiosity, and just kind of just take a step back instead of thinking, oh, I'm trying to endure this suffering. So I wonder if you could give me some insight on that.
Sometimes they're translated as patient endurance. So those two ideas are both kind of there. To my understanding, if one is holding the tension and the resistance so that one is not reacting in an unwise and unskillful way by revenge or breaking out into negative returning hostility for hostility because you're just holding it in. That is not necessarily, that's definitely not what we're seeking for. So not that kind of endurance. But then if you had something that actually you're not able to retaliate against, let's say it's very hot outside because we're having a heat wave, and then we have to endure the heat wave. So there's no use getting angry at the heat wave. It's a force of nature that's coming up at this time of year. And by being calm and taking care of ourselves and in a way sort of like relaxing with it, then we make the best of that situation. So the same thing, we're in a world which is what it is, and both in the internal landscape and the external landscape. And so there, if it's possible to relax and pervade the situation with actual kindness, that's the better way to go. But it does have that aspect of endurance.
Might I also
Go ahead.
might I also think of this perpetual upheaval of anxiety from my mind as like a heat wave? It's just a nature of this mind right now that doesn't seem to have enough control. It just keep happening. But if I see it that way, maybe I could have more patience. So, oh, it's not something that I need to worry about. It's just something that happens a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the they say that like a feeling is karmic result, so it's result of the previous conditions, and so you can't change the previous conditions. You can change the choices that you're making in the present moment, and that will have an impact on what's going on subsequently. But if fear or anxiety are arising, indeed it is because of all the previous conditions of your life. If you just tell yourself, oh, this anxiety is unskillful, bad, evil, unwholesome anxiety, and I'm going to punish myself twice. First, I'm going to feel anxious, and then I'm going to beat myself because I feel anxious. Then, or I'm going to really, like, I don't know, treat that. I'm going to try to be aggressive towards the inner state rather than being gentle. Then that's not going to work. When I was preparing for this, I read Thich Nhat Hanh's book about anger. And one thing he said that was kind of nice is that it takes time for anger to resolve. So when you see it, maybe this is also true for anxiety. He said, when you see it and you make the determination to release the anger, to let it go, it may not go just right away. He said it might take 10 minutes for it to go away. So you've got to be patient and bear it, even though you've decided to let it go, but it doesn't go immediately. And he says, well, it might even take 20 minutes, or it could take longer than 20 minutes. So, but the idea is that, especially with an emotional state, that just because it doesn't evaporate instantly doesn't mean that you're not doing the right thing as far as your practice. It can take time. You're doing the right practice, and then it still takes more time to resolve itself into a response to your good intention. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll call on Maisie.
Hi, Ayya from Maisie from Singapore. Sorry I missed your talk, so I just joined not too long ago. But I'm guessing that the talk is on patience and endurance.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just thought that I want to share something on endurance and of course anxiety, which is my best friend. So on patience, I saw a quote not too long ago. I think it's from Rumi or something. It says that patience is not so much to endure something, but to see something to the end. Or rather to see how the dusk changed to dawn. So that was what I did in my meditation today. I woke up at 6-ish in the morning. So I really wanted to see the change from night to day, from before the sun came up to when the sun came up. And then I saw how there is the conditions affecting the moods and the energies of the body. So the change in between is not a total change, but it's like white and black, and then in between there's that gray area with certain time that change. So I saw that, and it was quite interesting. And as for anxiety, it is something that I'm prone to for the last, I don't know, 20 years or so. And I've had panic disorder before. So it came out last year, and this year I'm just managing, like sometime I can feel the anxiety arising. So I mean, I've really understood the teachings now, like the first noble truth is about not avoiding suffering and really to see it to the end, and that there is no end, there's a change. And that change, like what the Buddha say, everything is a flux, is impermanent. So, and it's not to block it. And I understand the word translation for endurance, like what you say is not to keep it in, because keeping it in really just makes it worse. So I just allow it to flow and to really accept it and to open up to it. Because the other day when I was when I was on the bus and I was just staying with the awareness that knows, and then I could see that everything that happens to the body, the jittery, the anxiety, has to do with like not just karmic propensities, tendencies, but it's also like genetic, and all these are conditioned. And I realized that it's something that I have to work with in this lifetime. And to work with it is not to push it away, is to understand it, like in the second noble truth, and then to release it. Release it is not to like let it go, because it's really not so simple, but really it comes with acceptance, opening up and allowing the spaciousness to. It's very funny. It's like relaxation amidst the turbulence. So it's a skill that I'm working on. So that's what I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a wonderful observation. And we can get so judgmental against ourselves, thinking that the practice has to be done in a certain way, and that we're not successful if the if our practice is if we're not just able to do throw away all those unskillful states of mind, like being overtaken by fear or by sorrow, by grief, by anxiety, or even anger.
Yeah, it's really hard not to clamp up, right, when you have feelings that you don't want. So it's really learning to accept and to find space around it. I've succeeded sometimes. Actually, come to think of it, it does improve.
Right.
20 years ago, I couldn't do it. That was even before I learned mindfulness. Then I noticed that it is the thought of fear that brings up fear. So then if you don't want to think of fear, then you're also thinking of fear. So one can only really just relax. And if the fear comes out, to really just embrace it in a way that is like a mother to the child in the Metta Sutta. I mean, it's easier said than done, but I think it can be done.
I just want to give the caution, I guess. We don't want to be patient and say, I have a tendency to kill, and so I'm just going to be patient with myself while I'm killing. Or I'm going to be patient with myself while I'm doing sexual misconduct, using intoxicants, telling lies, or other things like that with the realm of sila, that we should make the effort and restrain. And likewise, what Maisie was speaking about is a kind of a samvara, that even if we have a typical emotional response to things, like in this example, anxiety, that to simply understand that that's a long established part of my genetics, my inheritance, are the result of conditions, and to, in a way, one is not picking up or being driven or being controlled by it when you have a bit more of a detached point of view. And at that point, when you're able to simply endure, this is part of like the inheritance of the previous causes and conditions. And so what's coming from the previous conditions, we have to endure it. There's nothing else to do. And so indeed, that is a part of patience. If we develop the perfection of patience, we will even, it's like to be disturbed and not disturbed at the same time, that a feeling comes up, an emotion comes up, but then there's another part of us that says, okay, I see you now. I see what's happening. I think this may be enough for now. We can close by giving respects to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namasami Supatipando Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you, everyone, for your patient listening tonight.
Thank you, Ayya. Good night.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you.